So Keely and I are going to present on Inclusion Ed, using the evidence to support diverse learners in inclusive classrooms. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which Keely and I are standing, the Turrbal and the Yagara people, who are also the first innovators of this land. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. I'm Cheryl and I have the joy of heading up knowledge translation at Autism CRC. In this role, I lead the delivery of a number of digital service research translation initiatives, including Inclusion Ed, with Dr. Keely Harper presenting here today. Autism CRC was established in 2013 under the Commonwealth Government's Cooperative Research Centres program. Our vision is to see autistic people empowered to use diverse strengths and interests. We are the world's first national collaborative research effort focused on autism research across the lifespan. We're a partner network of 56 participants in Australia and internationally: researchers, service providers, clinicians, education professionals, government, and most importantly, autistic individuals, their families and carers. We work to develop and deliver evidence-based practice, products and policy that improve outcomes for autistic individuals. We work across 3 core program areas. In the early years, focusing on earlier and more accurate diagnosis. In the school years, enhancing learning and teaching and promoting inclusive classrooms. In adulthood, finding a place in society, enabling successful participation in higher education, employment, and improving the health and well-being of autistic individuals. Today, we'll focus on the translation of our education program of research, an enormous body of work that's seen some 25 research projects develop many outputs, research findings, reports, technologies, guidelines, and resources. Of course, we all know that research alone doesn't result in improved student outcomes. So the challenge that we took on about 6 years in was how might we support teachers to deliver evidence-based and research-informed practice to really improve student outcomes. One of the projects was co-design and development of an online professional learning platform for teachers, Inclusion Ed, which was developed with the following objectives, which Keely will take you through right now.
When we came to the Inclusion Ed project, we had 3 objectives. The first of these was to understand teachers' professional learning needs, because we really wanted to help teachers to change, amend or introduce new practice into their classrooms. We didn't want Inclusion Ed to just be a repository for research findings and research-informed practices and resources. Secondly, we wanted Inclusion Ed to be flexible enough to be able to accommodate the wide range of methodologies and project types and outcomes that the research had provided us with. And thirdly, we wanted to enable researchers to be able to communicate their findings in such a way that teachers could integrate those within a professional learning cycle, and so again change their practice. And to this end, we developed a translation toolkit for researchers. So Inclusion Ed started with a series of co-design sessions that were run with education policy makers, classroom teachers, specialist support teachers, as well as external specialists such as speech language pathologists or occupational therapists. And these sessions were held in 5 of our states and territories across Australia. And so we worked with teachers to help plan out what a professional learning opportunity that leads to practice change looks like, and worked with them to tweak that to make it the best opportunity it could be. We then, once we had the prototype, we worked with teachers we had an advisory group of over 100 teachers who gave us information on our visual communication strategies, and we also did user testing. And that actually that design and development hasn't stopped yet, where we continue to do that as we move forward. So what we have developed is a platform that provides research-informed resources as well as evidence-based research and details on that in a way that teachers are able to access it. And then importantly, there is a section where they are taken through a process that aligns with the EITSL professional learning, high quality professional learning process. And so that all is within Inclusion Ed. And then importantly, we have developed part of that as a community of practice, which allows teachers to share their experiences with other teachers and to rate practices that they have used. From the co-design transcripts and analysis of these, we identified 4 key principles that underline Inclusion Ed and its design. The first of those is access to evidence base, and this comes under the umbrella of strong foundation. The second is efficient discovery. Teachers come to the site with a short amount of time where they want to find some information or a practice to support them in the classroom. Supported implementation, as I've alluded to before, is that processor of professional learning that teachers undertake, which leads to practice change. And the fourth one is that we have an inbuilt community of practice, which allows teachers to learn from one another and share their experiences. So first of all, I'm just going to briefly talk to you about the strong foundation, and this is the fact that everything on Inclusion Ed has a level of research underpinning it. And you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, this is what one of the core projects will look like. And so within these, there are easily digestible explanations. They enable teachers to evaluate the practice and then also understand what are the optimal mechanisms and conditions that will enable them to take this information into their classroom. And so you can see here, each of the projects on Inclusion Ed has a very familiar and regular structure that includes the summary, the aim of the project. Then as we go down, so that information is held here right at the front. And there's also a video on probably at the moment about 70% of the practices of the projects, I beg your pardon, that enables teachers to have a quick look and think, oh, I might like to go and dig into this a little bit further. It has a series of accordions that can each be opened, and I'll show you that in a little minute. But again, these have similar accordions throughout them, which is really key elements. Teachers have a quick reference guide that they can print out, and it gives information on who the researchers were and some of the literature that's either come from the project or which has underpinned the project. And some of those have direct links to the full text article. Some of them don't because of copyright, so we just provide the reference. So in terms of the evidence base and evaluation of the evidence, we've taken a two-pronged approach. The first of these on the left-hand side is to use the Evidence for Learning platform, which is comes under the umbrella of Social Ventures Australia. And so this is a website that teachers can go to, and that it evaluates Inclusion Ed practices as well. You can see here a range of organisations. So the Inclusion Ed practices are each given an evaluation based against some quite strict, rigorous criteria regarding the evidence base that demonstrates that different practices directly impact student learning. So it's not necessarily about student engagement or student participation, but it's specifically about student learning. On the right-hand side of the screen, we have adopted Left's process to help teachers understand that research develops and gains momentum over a number of rungs of his ladder. And down the bottom, it's a discovery phase. It's much more exploratory, and some of our research is exploratory. So that research isn't going to have a huge it will be research informed itself, but it won't have a huge amount, say, of randomized control trials or that level of rigor behind them. And it really also depends very much on what our research question is. So there's this process that we go through where teachers might develop a practice just through their experience, and then research will start to look at the comparison of that against other practices or against not having that practice, and then gradually it develops into much more of a rigorous practice with a stronger evidence base behind it. So that's the way that we've addressed evidence base within our website. It's quite a fraught area at the moment. If you search for evidence-based practices on the internet, you'll get many of those, and we wanted to be very transparent about the evidence that teachers will find. Now, this is perhaps the most of greatest interest to teachers, the supported implementation that is seen within each of the practices. So we have the projects that I've just introduced you to, and then from those projects there will be a number of different practices that teachers can carry out in the classroom based on recommendations from the different projects. So one of the projects, the Models of Practice project that was led by Aspect, Trevor Clark, actually generated more than 40 practices. So the practices include videos of the practice in action. It incorporates that cycle, as I mentioned, the cycle of professional learning. And what teachers had asked us in the co-design session was for some expert support of unpacking a practice and understanding how they could replicate that in their classroom. Similarly to the projects, each practice has a standard process or content structure, and this includes things like, are there resources available with this practice, gives you a summary. It also highlights whether or not the practices all help students, but what the benefit to students are, as well as what the benefit to teachers are. There is a short trailer video, and then you can see down the bottom here the plan, set goals, apply the practice, reflect and refine, and share. And they are the different elements of our high quality professional learning cycle. And you can see that we have links to the AITSL Charter for the professional learning of teachers and school leaders, and it helps teachers to just situate this cycle within their overall professional learning processes. So I'm just going to go to the next slide here. At the end of the process for teachers who have completed each of those stages, there's a recognition of professional learning certificate that can be downloaded and included within their portfolio evidence, particularly in terms of their own performance at their level of professional standard that they are working. The community of practice element then comes in, where teachers who again have been through that whole process are able to evaluate and give a star rating, and we can see this here, give a star rating. anyone who goes to the site and looks through a different practice, whether or not they go through that whole professional learning cycle, are able to post questions in the discussion board. And so the idea of this is to get a national conversation happening and a national community of practice where teachers are working together. And of course, this is moderated. It's not just left unmoderated. So now, in our current climate, we understand that parents are at home trying to teach, and we've identified a number of practices here that we think will assist teachers to support parents at home. Practices here include things like using visuals. Many parents are all over the use of visuals. They are experts in their own right. There are additional practices that might support teachers as they support parents working with students at home. These are things that are around structuring tasks, the use of self-management tools, and particularly to help teachers develop resources or activities for students to complete at home, how they can harness students' special interests in such a way that it increases their motivation to complete those tasks. Thank you. Sorry about that. So in terms of the access to Inclusion Ed, you can go to inclusioned.edu.au or use the QR code to get there and have a little look for yourselves. It is free. You are asked to register to have access to all of the practices, but everything on there is free. And of course, a project like this certainly cannot happen without a vast number of people, and we always want to thank and acknowledge all of the parents, families, students, teachers, schools, education organisations who have offered a huge amount of support to us to get Inclusion Ed off the ground. And of course, the team of researchers and developers and designers who also have worked to design and deliver Inclusion Ed. What we hope that you have seen from today is that Inclusion Ed offers you a way in which we can use technology to support not only teachers to manage and develop their own practice, but also to support students at a time when they really need support as they're working from home. So I thank you for your attention, and please, if you have any questions or have any comments about the site, definitely get in touch with us. We are currently undergoing further development of the site, so practices are always coming. Thanks very much for your time.